We're going to check out some surprise cut candidates going into training camp on today's show. But first, I want to know where you're tuning in from. Shout out your city for me in the comment section below, whether you're watching from Atlanta, somewhere in Georgia, or anywhere else in the country or the Southeast. Get in the comment section and represent your town. What's going on, everyone? Welcome into Falcons Today. Coming up on today's show, we're going to run through 5 surprise cut candidates for the Falcons. On a side personal note, I'm very happy to be here with you guys today. I was nearly stuck in the mess that is the Delta fiasco at Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson, but luckily I was able to rent a car. And I don't know if it's luckily that I was able to do that, because then I was rewarded with a 12-hour drive from Atlanta back to Dallas on Sunday. But let's get into some surprise cut candidates. Our first one is running back / wide receiver / cornerback, like Avery Williams. A name that you may remember, but you're like, why didn't I see him last year? Unfortunately, we didn't see Avery Williams at all last season. He missed the entire year due to a torn ACL, which he suffered in training camp. But the season before that, we did see a good dose of him on special teams. He actually led the NFL in punt return average with 16.2 yards per return with a minimum of 15 punt returns. So he was one of the most dynamic special teamers, which should carve out a pretty good role for him in 2024 with the new kick return rule, right? So why is Avery Williams on this list? Well, the Falcons had one of those actions speak louder than words examples, where they signed Ray McCloud, who came over from the 49ers, and they didn't sign him for his receiving duties. They signed him because of what he's able to do in special teams. You can look at his career punt return stats, his career kick return stats. Like Ray McCloud was brought in to do one thing, and maybe not one thing only, but primarily one thing, and that is play special teams for this team. Now, a quick reminder that we're going to have a whole new look on kick returns this year with the new kick return rules, where the kickoff team will line up on the opposing 40-yard line. The return team will have 9 players in the setup zone, which is their 30 to 35-yard line, and then 2 players will line up in the landing zone, which is the goal line to the 20-yard line. So some good news for Avery Williams is there's 2 players in the landing zone. So they may just take 2 guys that they feel can play special teams well. However, if Avery Williams is showing that his ceiling is return man number 2 behind Ray McCloud, they may just decide we're not going to dedicate a roster spot to someone who's not even our primary return guy. So for Avery Williams, he's got to find a way to bounce back from that torn ACL, which I think he's capable of doing. It's 2024. Players are really good at bouncing back from injuries with modern medicine. But he's also got to prove I'm more than just kick return man number 2. If that's your contribution to the 53-man roster, they'll likely find someone else who can do more than that and on his side be return man number 2. Now, before we look at the next surprise cut candidates, I do want to tell everyone watching about our sponsor today, which is Game Time. If you love summer baseball and want to catch a Braves game or any other major league team in your area, you're going to want to give Game Time a shot. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which means getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. One thing I really like about Game Time is their flash deals. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Plus, they offer the Game Time guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, download the Game Time app and redeem code CHAT If spelling is not your thing, it's right here for $20 off your first purchase. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Let's fast forward to surprise cut candidate number 2, Lorenzo Carter, the outside linebacker. Georgia Bulldog, who's entering his third year with the Falcons. Remember, they signed him after his brief stint with the Giants. They extended him to a 2-year contract, and that is wrapping up after 2024. So why is Lorenzo Carter on this list? Well, when you look at the Falcons linebacker room, we know Ebiketie, Ellis, Landman, and Troy Anderson. Those 4 guys, along with rookie JT Bertrand, so we'll say those 5 guys are locks to make the roster. Then you've got a bit of an open competition for the last inside linebacker spot, and I'll say 1 to 2 outside linebacker positions, which should be good news for Lorenzo Carter. However, last year, we saw a little bit of a regression from him compared to his first season with the Falcons, where he had 4 sacks and 58 tackles and a pick, whereas in year 2 back in ATL, 35 tackles and 3 sacks, 6 tackles for loss. So his role altogether diminished after year 1, which I'm not really sure as to why. I felt like he put together a solid 2022 season, but ultimately the coaching staff last year with Ryan Nielsen as DC, they favored the veteran Bud Dupree and Ebiketie much more than Lorenzo Carter. So when you factor in a regression last year and potentially $3.7 million in cap savings, if the Falcons feel like, hey, there's Lorenzo Carter and there's player X, and they are neck and neck, but Lorenzo Carter saves them $3.7 million, that might be enough to be like, tiebreaker goes to player X, whoever that may be. So the other question that the Falcons are going to answer is, can Bralen Trice, the rookie out of Washington, just outright win the starting job? Like, not win a job on the roster, but can Bralen Trice waltz in and be like, hey, I'm better. I've earned the starting job alongside Arnold Ebiketie. And now the Falcons have a backup that has $4.5 million cap hit and they can save $3.7 million. They may decide, yeah, we're going to take the savings and we're going to go with the rookie Bralen Trice, who last year at Washington put together 49 tackles, 11.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks. When he comes on the field this preseason and you guys get your first good look at him, I want you to think of one word when watching him: violent. He may not be the most savvy person. He may not have the best technique, but man, is he a pit bull off the leash. He is physical. He is violent. He is just someone you don't want to go up against for 4 quarters. So I'm excited to see what he can bring to the table. And if he brings a lot to the table, that could push a veteran like Lorenzo Carter out of a job. So I'll put the over-under at 3.5 sacks for Bralen Trice. Last year, 3rd-round pick Zach Harrison from Ohio State got 3 sacks in year 1. Can another 3rd-round pick at a similar position get more than that? Let me know what you think down below in the comment section. We're on to 3rd surprise cut candidate. It is quarterback Taylor Heinicke. This one wouldn't be like a big surprise given the draft pick of Michael Penix and the signing of Kirk Cousins. But when you look at Atlanta's quarterback room, like, I've got Michael Penix at QB2 because I think that's where we all believe he'll end up. But I think at the present moment, Taylor Heinicke would be the backup for Kirk Cousins if something, God forbid, were to happen to Cousins. But I'm looking at this quarterback room and I'm wondering if Michael Penix proves to the coaching staff he is reliable and he can be trusted as a backup in year 1, and John Paddock shows that he is worthy of a QB3 spot, practice squad, someone that could taxi back and forth between the lineup if needed, then what's Taylor Heinicke's purpose? Because all he's doing is taking up $4.5 million of cap space. Now, they don't have a ton of cap savings, actually, after he took a pay cut. There's only $1.2 million in cap savings. So if you're arguing to move on from Taylor Heinicke because you could save a lot of money, you're wrong. But I think what could be likely is if the Falcons, after 3 preseason games, have a ton of trust in Michael Penix to be the backup. And keep in mind, being the backup is more than just if Cousins goes down, do we think Penix could step in and keep the ship afloat? Being the backup also includes, hey, is Michael Penix going to help Kirk Cousins prepare every single Sunday in the quarterback room, in the film room, and get our starting QB to a spot where he can be the best version of himself? If they answer yes to both those questions at the end of August, watch for Taylor Heinicke, who you can look at his stats from last year, maybe get traded. I could see the Falcons answering the phone going, oh, your team lost their quarterback, or you lost your backup quarterback, and you want a more sturdy veteran option. I bet the Falcons would be very open to trading Heinicke away for, say, a 5th-round draft pick. That's what Josh Dobbs went for last year from the Browns to the Cardinals. And what do you know? The Falcons lost a 5th-round draft pick because of the Kirk Cousins tampering allegations. So that could be their way of covering up that potential loss in the draft. All right, before we look at the remaining surprise cut candidates, some trivia for today's show. We're going to go back in time a little bit for some of the longtime viewers. Who led the Falcons in receiving yards in the 1990s? So put together the whole decade, who had the most receiving yards in the 90s. Let me know in the comments section below. Our 4th surprise cut candidate is defensive tackle Taquan Graham. I kind of feel for Taquan Graham. I don't think this is a product of him being a bad player for the Falcons. I think it's just wrong place, wrong time. As Raheem Morris came in, he's really prioritizing youth on the defensive line. And Graham's not some old dude. He's going into his 4th year in the NFL. But, man, look at the Falcons' defensive line. I mean, they re-signed Kentavious Street. You got to believe they have a role for him on their roster after doing so. They used their 2nd-round draft pick on Ruka Rororo. He's making the team. They used a day 3 draft pick on Brandon Dorlus and Zion Logue. They have a spot on the team. That's 4 defensive tackles right there. James Smith-Williams signed in free agency. I'd envision he has a spot on the roster. Frickin' Eddie Goldman is coming out of retirement. Like, it's just been a little bit unlucky for a player at that position who's already kind of a bubble player. So, some background on Graham. Through 3 seasons with the Falcons, he's made 16 starts. Last year, we saw Grady Jarrett go down. I believe Lakel London was the next one that went down following him. Even Kentavious Street, who they traded for from the Eagles, went down. And despite all those injuries and that presenting a good opportunity for Graham to kind of, grab the bull by the horns and run with it, we didn't really see that in the second half of 2023. There is some savings to be had, $1 million in change. So I don't think you're moving on from Graham to save the books or anything, but that's going to be a factor in a decision. Now, the former 5th-round pick out of Texas may not be drafted too recently to be cut. It has not been, looking back, a good draft class for Atlanta in Terry Fontenot's first year with Arthur Smith. If Kyle Pitts does not work out, this probably will go down as the worst draft class in Falcons history. Like Richie Grant, benched in year 3. Jalen Mayfield, cut after 2 seasons. Darren Hall, cut. Drew Dahlman is the only good player on this list after Kyle Pitts. Taquan Graham, he's a bubble player. Aid Ogundoji, released. Avery Williams, kind of on the bubble. Frank Darby, cut. I mean, nearly half of the players drafted in 2021 have already been released. So, I don't think you should make the argument, no, they won't move on from Graham. Terry Fontenot picked him. He's moved on from a lot of guys he's picked so far. They haven't been very good. 5th and final surprise cut candidate, Mike Hughes, the cornerback. Former 1st-round pick by the Minnesota Vikings. He's been competing for a starting cornerback role with Clark Phillips, but all the early signs point to Clark Phillips having a lead in that CB2 battle opposite of A.J. Terrell. So why would Clark Phillips be a surprise cut candidate? Well, when I look at this cornerback room, let's say the Falcons take 6 corners. I think you can lock in A.J. Terrell, Clark Phillips, and D. Alford. So that leaves 3 open spots that are definitely up for grabs. And if we see Antonio Hamilton, Kevin King, and then Harrison Hand, Dane Cruikshank, or just anyone else outperform Mike Hughes for that 3rd backup cornerback spot, if it gets to that point, all of a sudden Atlanta may feel like, you know what, if Hughes isn't going to be a starter for this team, is he going to give us anything on special teams? Like, first, look at Hughes over the last 4 seasons. He's unfortunately been a bit of a journeyman player, going from the Vikings to the Chiefs to the Lions to the Falcons in 4 consecutive years for being a former 1st-round pick. And he really hasn't been able to latch on anywhere except for Minnesota and Atlanta, where he is kind of scheduled to be on the Falcons for a second straight season. But like I was saying earlier, though, if Mike Hughes is not going to be a contributor on defense, is he going to be a contributor on special teams? Last year, he played 18% of special team snaps. That was down from 24% the year before in Detroit and 38% the year before in Kansas City. So maybe the Falcons coaching staff will view Mike Hughes as a solid special teamer, and they'll bump that 73 back up to the 3 digits. But it's been going downhill from on special teams. And if he's not going to be a starter on defense, I think there's going to be a question as to what does he bring to the table. All right, so let me know when it comes to the cornerback position, should the Falcons add another corner? Give me a yes or no. I think they should. I don't think they have to sign a big-name guy. Like, I'm willing to trot out Clark Phillips and see how that goes. Like, I'm willing to kind of bet on that version of the youth movement. But I do think that having quality corners when you don't have, or quantity, like good depth at least, when you don't have a ferocious pass rush that is going to get to the quarterback in 1.2 seconds and you're going to rely on your DBs to hold up in coverage for a long time, it's probably worth having an extra guy in the roster. All right, that trivia question from earlier. Who led the Falcons in receiving yards in the 1990s? I'll give you guys like 3 more seconds to think about it. Pause the video if you like. But the trivia answer, drum roll please. It is, we'll get the answer at the bottom here for you. But playing, I want to read the stats off to you guys. Playing from 1994 to 1999, it's Terrence Mathis. There it is. 6,106 yards. So let me know if you got the question correct. Terrence Mathis from 94 to 99, 6,106 yards. That's 500 more yards than second place. And now the second place name is escaping me. But appreciate everyone for watching. We're going to sign off and see you all later.